Hello, my name is Alex, and I'm the Irrigation Director at DreamLawn. And tonight we are going to get some freezing weather, so we need to be thinking about winterizing irrigation systems. We're here at this home today. It happens to have an above ground backflow preventer, and because this device is above ground, as soon as we get below 32 degrees, we need to think about protecting this thing, because replacing any of the components of this system can get really costly. So we need to make sure that we do a couple steps to at least protect this overnight, if it's going to be a little bit before we can actually get the system fully winterized. So we need to take some steps to protect this device since it is above ground tonight. You will need a few tools. So you'll need some kind of flat screwdriver. In this case, I like the little stubby one. You'll need some kind of pair of pliers. And in this case, I'm probably going to use one of these turn-on keys. Not every situation calls for this, but it is come in handy if you do have one around. And then once we finish the process here, you'll need a couple old towels, an old blanket, some kind of sleeping bag or something to cover this once we get the draining process complete. Okay, the next step in this process is to turn the water off and then drain any components that are in here. In this case, the main valve is right after the water meter in the front yard. In a lot of cases, the water valve will be in the basement, but the process is similar. We'll need to turn the water off to the system, and then once we do a few things, we'll have to drain out a line, whether it's out here in the front yard or in the basement. Like I said, the process is very simple. So I'm gonna go in here, this green lid, got a little mulch on it, but that's where the valves are to the system. So I'm gonna get this opened up. Okay, in that case, it was very easy. So in this particular system, there's a valve here that just kind of has a plus sign handle on it. So that needs to be closed all the way counterclockwise until it stops. In this case, you can use pliers. Sometimes these will turn by hand, but I'm going to use my handy little valve key here. I'm going to turn this valve, like I said, clockwise until it stops. Now the next step, once I get the water turned off here, is I'm going to remove this cap, and some water will come out as I do this. So that's normal. If the water doesn't stop, you probably don't have the valve turned off all the way. So keep that in mind. And if you're doing this in a basement, it probably wouldn't hurt to have one of those old towels with you in case you do spill a bit of water on the floor. So you can clean that up. Yeah, there was just a little bit of residual pressure in there, but it looks like I got the valve off all the way because there's no more water coming out from that fitting. So from there, we'll go to the next step, to the backflow preventer. So the next steps are to drain this device. So what you're going to need is your screwdriver now. And what I'm going to do is open up the little valve on each 4 of these little test ports on here. And a little bit of water will come out of that, and some water will actually continue to drain from this part of the device. So I'm just going to open these up. And we really just need to open these up. There's going to be some residual pressure on there, as the irrigators were used to getting wet, so that's not a big surprise. We're gonna open all these about a 1/4 of a turn. So each one of these little valves is at about a 45-degree angle. That will allow the pressure to release off of that and drain out. And also both of these blue ball valve handles, we're gonna turn those to a 45-degree angle as well. The reason we do that is because if these valves are all the way open or all the way closed, water can get trapped in the ball of this ball valve on the inside of this brass piece, and it can freeze and break and split this brass piece, which will cause damage, and then you'll have to pay to get that repaired. We have to do a couple more steps to make sure this is fully protected until the system can be properly winterized the rest of the way with an air compressor. But for now, we'll go on to the next step. Now we need to go to the controller and run through all the zones just briefly, up to a minute a piece, just to make sure we got any of the residual pressure on these above ground components drained out, so it doesn't cause damage tonight once it gets below freezing. And in this case, our customer here has a smart controller, which makes life easier on everybody. So I don't actually have to get to the physical controller that's in the garage. I can do everything I need to do today from right here. So as I go through, I have a zone running right now, as you can see. So I'll just kind of go through zones one by one to get the rest of that kind of drained out. At least that gives us some protection before we finish the rest of the evacuation process with an air compressor. Is for some added protection, is get some old towels, an old blanket, sleeping bag or something, and basically just wrap some things around this device and all the above ground piping loosely. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just kind of round something like that, just to give it some added protection to make sure that nothing's going to be damaged when it gets below freezing tonight. The next step is to make sure you're on the schedule for a DreamLawn irrigator to come out with a large air compressor to blow the rest of the remaining water out of the lines through the heads. And the reason we do that because it will get cold enough to start damaging lines underground. And typically we want to get most of these done by about Thanksgiving. That's when it starts being consecutively cold enough to get a little frost in the ground, and we can start seeing issues arise around then. If you have any additional questions, go to DreamLawn.com and we'll see you out on the lawn.